So thank you for coming to the APA Virtual Sport Nutrition Congress. You know this presentation, this session is champion of compliance, ingredient, and product testing for label validation, Prop 65, and GMOs. We're happy to have Mark Jost as our moderator, Dr. Wildman, myself, and Darryl Sullivan as speakers with all different purviews related to product testing, label validation, Prop 65, and GMOs. With that in mind, I just wanted to give you a brief background about myself. I work for Nutrisource as a Vice President of Scientific Affairs. I'm a co-founder of the International Society of Sports Nutrition. I'm also a co-editor of the JISSN Journal. I'm an adjunct assistant professor, faculty at the Dr. Kiran Patel College of Osteopathic Medicine at Nova Southeastern University. I'm also an adjunct professor in the exercise science department in College of Healthcare Sciences, and I'm a sport nutritionist for the Sanford Mixed Martial Arts team. Contact information is here. Let's move on and discuss this. As a matter of just disclosures for potential conflicts of interest, I do sit on the scientific advisory board of Dymatize, and I also work for a company that does contract research and contract service related work, Nutrisource. So now I'm taking this topic from a sports nutrition perspective. And what I'd like to do as one of my perspectives is break out what is sports nutrition and who is the community of sports nutrition and why does it matter to people that make ingredients and people that make finished products. And on one hand, for sports nutrition, we view that as the professional athlete, for the Olympic athlete, for the college level athlete, the independent elite athlete, a competitive athlete, or competitive team. However, within sports and nutrition also, I don't think that we can overlook that there is children and adolescent and teenage sport leagues. There are adult sport leagues. We have people that are just what I call gym goers. They just go to the gym, but they're not part of a basketball league or a soccer league or a football league. And then we have people that are active outdoor enthusiasts, bike riding, running, trails, and so forth. All of these individuals and other make up a different spectrum of sports nutrition or active nutrition. And each one of these potentially has a different perspective about what he or she looks for in a product or in a label. And I wanted to share some of this so that this thought goes into, the product development, if you will. So when I'm dealing with my professional athletes and my college athletes, I like to break things into looking at what is the sports nutrition realm versus the informed or engaged consumer. So competitive athletes, or those people much more in the sport nutrition realm, they may focus on looking for third-party, what was the product third-party tested for banned substances? Does the product have transparent labels? Is the product true to their label claims for macronutrients, for vitamins, minerals, and dosages of any of the other ingredients? Unrelated to this all, consumers also sometimes impacted by price, which sometimes impacts how a company decides what it's going to do in their development. Competitive athletes may focus more on products that are protein powders, then orally delivered products, and then below that, beverages. We can't forget that foods are also sport products. While Gatorade doesn't come from a gator tree, it has a nutrition facts panel, so it's labeled a food, and it's a beverage. Engaged consumers in this space, my experience, both as a research professional and a registered dietitian and a sport nutritionist, says that their interest is genetic modified organisms. Is it GMO, non-GMO? What is GMO? Does it have a clean label? And honestly, sometimes I can't tell you the difference between a clean label and label transparency. I think they mean the same thing, but different forums have different discussions. Is the label transparent? And what level of transparency is good enough for the consumer? From the time you caught the fish to the time that it was delivered to the person's table, truth in labeling they do care about. They also want to know, is it a dietary supplement or is it a food based upon the facts panel? These are some of the things I ask you to think about, because these are some of the things I get asked about as a health professional. So some of the common certifications on the sport nutrition realm that athletes look for, competitive athletes, are any of these 5. And there are more. Just because one is up here or one is not up here doesn't mean that it's an endorsement over something else. This means that these are commonly used across the globe. There's the NSF Certified for Sport. There's the Banned Substance Control Group. There's Informed Choice, trusted by sport. There's the Cologne list out of Germany. And then there's also the HOSTA list, which I'll expand upon. And where does this come from, some may ask? Well, this actually comes from the United States Anti-Doping Association. The United States Anti-Doping Association, in accordance with the UFC, recently, meaning 2019, 2020, released guidelines for what athletes should look for in terms of certifications for supplements. And these were the 5 that were listed. And this is, I know this because I work with some of these athletes, and I work with USADA, and I work with the UFC Performance Institute for, again, some of my mixed martial arts. So these are what become important to professional baseball players, NFL players, and so forth. There's a whole other session to go over this. So who is the target consumer? I was recently having a conversation, and some things have been edited. This is an actual email, but that's been edited for this, where I asked a big beverage brand why, or were they interested, could they get a certification for their product, or any certifications for their product. And the reason I asked was one of my Olympic tested or drug tested Olympic athletes wanted to include this beverage as part of their daily intake and diet, and was a little bit nervous, even though it's a nutrition facts panel, because it doesn't have levels of certification. Well, the answer that I got back, I thought was interesting and maybe give some insight. Hi, Doug. Thanks for writing in. We have an ongoing review of third-party certifications such as XXX or ZZZ, meaning examples. Each have pros and cons. No one standard is recognized across the industry. This is the beverage industry. And they used some data from 2016 to show that there was only, out of 139 products that were certified, but there was about 90,000 products that were in that category in foods and beverages. So they feel like the lack of a seal doesn't show that a product is untrustworthy. And I thought that they missed the point of the benefit of a seal helps consumers have added confidence in the product, that it's delivering what is said and for what the seal is about. So I just thought this gave some insight. This is a rather big beverage company that operates in the coffee space. So now, remember earlier I mentioned that you have the sports and active nutrition consumer. You also have the engaged and interested consumer. What the one that's informed. What are some of the certifications that they look for? Is it iGen, one of the testings that's used for determining that a product has not been with genetically modified ingredients, or the non-GMO, or gluten-free, or is it organic? These are just some examples. And yes, some of these are by Nutrisource, some of these are by Eurofins, some of these are by other groups. There's a handful out there. I share these with you again because the engaged consumer seeks these, but we need to understand why, and do they have added value? And I think that they do. So some global thoughts that I like to share on this is that for companies, regulatory guidance on ingredient and product testing for label validation, meaning truth in labeling, for transparency in labeling, has validity. Not only for California's Prop 65 Act or something being non-GMO, but it has actually validity for the supply chain and for the end user, and helps with staying within regulatory compliance where applicable. One thing that I bring up, and it started out in the conversation, that part of this whole aspect of dietary supplement and food and responsibility is identity testing. And Dr. Wildman mentioned that if there's a botanical, that it's supposed to be not only what the botanical is, but what part it was extracted or concentrated from, a stem, a leaf, or something else. That is a whole level of testing that many are not aware of that they're supposed to have going on. And you should now think that there's a lot that goes into these finished dietary supplements in order to make the product. And this is just part of the regulatory behind it. I also feel that as an industry, those people in the dietary supplement, food and beverage industry have a responsibility in parts to educate the consumer about what these programs are and why they should look for them and what the difference is in products that have them. And so I always also like to say to companies, do not underestimate the importance of your own QA/QC departments for helping you to actually build consumer confidence in the product, along with regulatory compliance and confidence in the product. And what I would like to just close with is compliance in manufacturing, labeling, marketing, and more with these global standards, not only federal and local standards, local, the state that you operate in, the states that you sell in, federal, what governs the whole United States. Now more than ever are more important to be compliant with because of what was pre-COVID and will be again post-COVID, a global economy and globalization of certain rules across industries. So compliance is regulatory, and regulatory can be complex, but there's an art and science to it. And by attending conferences and webinars like this, we hope that we're helping you learn a little bit more about that art and science. I look forward to answering questions at the end of our session for our Q&A, and I thank you for your time.
Thank